In the shadow of eternity, what does loyalty mean? When even gods are silent, and duty becomes the only prayer left to the living. There are stars in the eastern rim of the galaxy that no longer burn with natural light. Their radiance is cold, refracted through the broken glass of war. Once these stars marked the heart of the Ultramar segmentum, the proud realm of 500 worlds, bound by the word and will of Robuta Guilliman. They called it Ultramar, a bastion of order amid a sea of madness. But now, it burns. The wars of the Imperium are endless, but this war, this one, carries a weight that presses against the very bones of history. For it is not merely soldiers that fight here, it is legacies. The sons of Ultramar, heirs to Guilliman's vision, march across ash and ruin, their ceramite blue dulled by centuries of ceaseless battle. Against them rises an enemy that should not exist. An enemy that remembers a time before the Imperium, before mankind's dominion, before even the light of the Astronomicon touched the void. They are called by many names: the Undying, the Silent King's Children, the Deathless Legions. But to those who face them, they are simply the Necrons. It began on the world of Thalassar Secundus, one of Ultramar's jewel planets. Once a paradise of white seas and crystal domes, it is now a graveyard of glass. The Ultramarines arrived expecting rebellion, the work of heretics or Xenos raiders. What they found was silence. Entire cities turned to dust, their inhabitants reduced to shadows seared into walls. And in that silence, a rhythm, a pulse beneath the ground, steady and inhuman. When the first tremors came, the earth split open like the mouth of a god, too long asleep. Vast tomb structures rose, black and glimmering, their surfaces whispering with static hymns. The dead did not rise screaming. They rose marching. Blue-armored giants met bronze phalanxes in the ruins of a dead world. Bolter fire lit the horizon, shells bursting against metal bodies that would not stay broken. Even when torn apart, they crawled, reconstructed, reformed. To fight the Necrons is to fight inevitability itself. The Ultramarines fought with the precision of doctrine, their captains quoting Guilliman's codex like scripture. Know the measure of war, and you shall know victory. But there is no measure to a war against death. When Captain Sicarius led the second company through the breach lines, he saw the truth that no codex could prepare him for. The enemy was not invading Ultramar, they were awakening within it. For beneath every world of the 500, beneath every temple, fortress and shrine, ancient vaults slumbered waiting for a signal that had come. The war spread like infection. From Prandium's shattered domes to Eax's burning fields, the Necron legions emerged. The sons of Ultramar fought back with fury unmatched. Titans walked the plains of Heraclea, their footsteps crushing metallic ranks by the thousands. Strike cruisers burned through the void, their bombardments turning night into a storm of fire. But for every tomb raised, another opened. For every victory declared, the enemy returned in silence. And silence is the weapon of the Necrons. It seeps into the soul, that sense of futility, of being measured, dissected, and judged by things that no longer possess compassion. The humans they kill mean nothing to them. They are exterminating pests that once ruled the galaxy they built and lost. It is said that one Ultramarine chaplain, Brother Varanus, stood upon the ruins of Thalassar's great library and saw his reflection in the polished carapace of a Necron lord. The machine spoke to him, not in words, but in memory. Images of suns being extinguished, of human empires crumbling into dust. It was not a threat, it was remembrance. And for a fleeting moment, Varanus wept, for he realized the galaxy had died before, and would die again. But the Ultramarines do not yield. They are the Emperor's will made flesh, their faith not in immortality, but in duty. When one falls, another takes his place, chanting litanies of battle beneath banners torn by plasma storms. The smell of incense and ozone mingles with burning flesh. The hymns of the chaplains rise like thunder, defiant, tragic, unending. The Deathless Legions advance without sound, their ranks unbroken, their movements perfectly synchronized. Each step is like the tolling of a bell marking the end of a civilization. Their weapons are green arcs of lightning that strip flesh from bone, soul from body. And yet, in every engagement they seem to be searching, not merely for conquest, but for something deeper, something hidden within Ultramar itself. The librarians whisper of psychic echoes, of forgotten signals beneath Guilliman's empire. The Codex Astartes warns against superstition, yet even its pages seem to hum with unease. For in the archives of Macraga, in the oldest sealed vaults beneath the fortress of Hera, there exists a map, not drawn by the hand of any man, but etched in radiant energy. A map that predates the Imperium, a map that aligns with the Necron tomb networks beneath the 500 worlds. Could it be that Ultramar, Guilliman's perfect empire, was built upon the bones of an older one? The thought is heresy. But war has a way of uncovering the forbidden. On the world of Espandor, an entire company vanished into the tomb depths. No Vox signals, no survivors, only a single transmission, distorted, filled with screams and metallic whispers. The last word discerned from it was not human. It was ancient. A name spoken in a tongue lost before Terra was born. The Mechanicus of Ultramar began their excavations, desperate to understand. Their prayers to the Omnissiah mingled with the dread that perhaps even their machine god was not the first. And when they found it, the chamber beneath Espandor's crust, their faith fractured like glass under pressure. At the center stood a monument, a vast obsidian monolith bearing inscriptions that no human cogitator could decipher. Around it, skeletal machines bowed in eternal worship. And beneath the monolith pulsed something alive, a heart of living metal, beating once every 1,000 seconds, resonating through the void. The tech priests tried to contain it. They prayed, they screamed, then they burned. The explosion leveled half the continent, and from its ashes, the first true Necron Lord appeared, taller than a dreadnought, crowned in emerald fire. His voice rippled through the warp, like the echo of a dying star. "This realm is ours. You merely dwell upon our graves." Across the 500 worlds, his words became a plague. Vox networks distorted. Astropathic links failed. The light of Ultramar itself seemed dimmer. And yet, Guilliman's sons stood resolute. For what is courage, if not defiance against inevitability? At the edge of the void, aboard the battle barge Valin's Wrath, the Ultramarines gathered their might. A war council convened, their armor still scorched from battle. Hololithic projections showed a spreading network of tomb awakenings, geometric, deliberate, almost ritualistic. It was no random uprising, it was a pattern, a sigil. And within that sigil lay the coordinates of Macrag. The realization fell upon them like cold iron. The Necrons were not merely reclaiming territory, they were converging. All their awakenings, all their movements, all their endless marches were drawing inward toward the throne world of Ultramar itself, to the resting place of Guilliman. The war that began as defense had become revelation. The Necrons were not here to conquer, they were here to reclaim. In the silent hours before the next engagement, the Ultramarines knelt within the halls of the fortress of Hera. They prayed not for victory, but for meaning. Their voices were soft, echoing between pillars carved with the faces of heroes long dead. Outside, the sky boiled with storm clouds lit by green lightning. Brother Varanus stood before the Primarch's stasis chamber, the eternal figure of Guilliman suspended in light, untouched by time. He whispered through his helm, "Father, your empire trembles, but we will not let it fall, not while we still draw breath." And as he turned to leave, he heard something. A sound so faint it could have been a trick of the mind. A heartbeat. Soft. Steady. Human. The candles flickered. The air grew cold. And in the distant void beneath the surface of a dying world, the Deathless Legions turned their gaze toward Macragga. The 500 worlds burn, the living pray, and the dead. Remember, the war for Ultramar has only just begun. The heartbeat still echoed in the dark, soft, defiant, impossible. Varanus stood motionless before the suspended form of his Primarch. The light surrounding Guilliman flickered, faintly distorted, as if reality itself had drawn a breath. He whispered a prayer through cracked vox filters, unsure if it was to the Emperor or to the silent giant before him. Outside the fortress of Hera, thunder rolled. The war had reached the gates of Macragga. On the outer defense bastions, the night was lit by fire. A storm of plasma and tracer rounds carved patterns into the black heavens. Sergeant Ilarion of the 9th Company wiped soot from his visor, staring into the mist below the mountains. He had fought tyrannids, chaos, and the horrors of the warp itself, but nothing like this. The Necrons advanced as a perfect tide. No fear, no sound, no hesitation. Each time the Ultramarines fell, their brothers dragged their bodies to the chaplains for rites they no longer had time to complete. The rites became murmured fragments. The Emperor, forgive us. The Emperor, remember us. Among the dying fires, a single servitor keened softly, replaying the same vox recording. This realm is ours. The machine repeated it until its jaw mechanism snapped. In the strategium halls of Hera, the War Council had become a theater of despair disguised as logic. Holographic projections displayed the 500 worlds collapsing inward, each planet sending desperate distress calls before falling silent. The senior commanders debated evacuation routes, counteroffensives, orbital purges. None of it mattered. For every ship they dispatched, 100 more Necron vessels appeared from nowhere, silent and glimmering like tombstones in the void. Librarian Cassian leaned forward, eyes bloodshot from psychic strain. "They are not advancing randomly," he said. "They move according to geometry, ritual precision. Every world they claim completes a pattern." Captain Sicarius' gauntleted fist slammed onto the table. "Then tell us, Librarian, what is the pattern?" Cassian hesitated. A sigil of binding, but not theirs. The council fell silent. "Whose then?" He did not answer. His eyes were drawn to the center of the map, to Macragga. Across the fortress, prayers echoed through vox relays and open channels. Tech priests chanted binary psalms to stabilize failing reactor cores. Chaplains blessed ammunition with incense and blood. Civilians, those rare, terrified souls permitted within the fortress walls, whispered names of saints long erased by time. They did not pray for salvation. They prayed for remembrance. Down in the catacombs beneath Hera, a Mechanicus expedition uncovered something that should not have existed. A sealed vault marked with the Primarch's personal sigil. The Magos overseeing the dig muttered a dozen litanies before breaking the seal. Inside lay a chamber of alien design, smooth obsidian walls pulsing with faint green light. Upon a pedestal rested an orb of silver and jade, humming softly like a living heart. When the Magos reached out to touch it, the orb bloomed with light. The walls came alive with glyphs, neither Necron nor human, something between. Data streamed into their augmetics faster than flesh could endure. Their eyes burst, their metal limbs convulsed. The last message they transmitted to the surface was fragmented, but clear. He built upon their graves, knowing what lay beneath. The fortress vox channels died within the hour. Above Macragga's orbit, the Ultramar fleet burned. Void ships detonated in silence, their wreckage drifting like dying angels across the void. Admiral Lixios issued the final order: planetary lockdown. No reinforcements would come, no retreat would be sanctioned. Ultramar would hold, or Ultramar would die. Back on the surface, in the Cathedral of St. Aeon, Chaplain Varanus delivered his sermon to those who remained. His voice was calm, though the sky above the stained glass was aflame. "Brothers," he said, "the Emperor gave us faith to endure the impossible. He did not promise victory, he promised meaning." A scout whispered a prayer beside him. "But what if meaning dies with us?" Varanus turned. Then meaning was never ours to claim. Outside, the first Necron monoliths breached the atmosphere, descending like black suns. In the tunnels beneath Macraga city, refugees hid among statues of Guilliman and his saints. They whispered stories of angels descending from the stars. They mistook the Ultramarines for gods, even as they bled beside them. When one of the civilians asked why the warriors never fled, an old serf answered quietly, "Because they were made not to." The air grew colder. The sound of metal footsteps approached. A mother clutched her child and began to sing the Emperor's hymn in a trembling voice. The hymn was drowned out by the hiss of Gauss fire. At the northern defense line, Sicarius watched as an entire ridge vanished in green light. The enemy weapons left no smoke, no flame, only disintegration. Vox reports screamed of units vanishing without contact. The Necrons were phasing through solid matter, appearing behind Imperial lines like ghosts made of metal. Still, the Ultramarines fought. Bolters thundered like the voices of angry gods. Dreadnoughts strode into the firestorm, their sarcophagi chanting machine prayers through damaged Vox. Every shot, every strike was defiance given form. And yet, the Necrons were not pressing for annihilation. They were encircling the fortress, forming a vast ring of light across the horizon. Cassian, standing in the Librarius Tower, felt it before the sensors confirmed it. A surge of psychic energy radiating from beneath the fortress itself. Not from the enemy, but from the vaults below. He realized, with mounting horror, that the sigil the Necrons formed was not a weapon, but a key. He ran to the command sanctum, shouting over the alarms. "They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to open something beneath Macraga." The command vox crackled with disbelief. Sicarius demanded clarification. The realization spread like infection. The Primarch was not their target. He was their conduit. In the chamber of stasis, the heartbeat had grown louder. The golden light that held Guilliman began to fracture, rays bending unnaturally. The air shimmered. Chaplain Varanus entered once more, his armor scorched from battle. He knelt before the sarcophagus, whispering, "Father, forgive us. We built our empire upon the bones of the dead." A whisper answered, though no lips moved. It came not from the Primarch, but from the air itself, ancient, mechanical, almost mournful. "We were promised silence. He broke the seal." Varanus recoiled. "Who speaks?" The lights dimmed. A spectral figure flickered, half Necron, half man. Its form was unstable, torn between metal and memory. The architect of Ultramar knew. He built his empire atop our prisons, bound our tombs in faith and reason. "You lie," Varanus growled. The apparition's eyes burned with emerald flame. "Then look upon the truth." Visions flooded his mind, Guilliman's ships descending upon empty worlds, excavating ruins older than mankind, constructing cathedrals over sleeping tombs, embedding anti-Necron resonators within city foundations. Every law, every line of the Codex Astartes, every structure of Ultramar, designed not just for order, but for containment. Guilliman had not built a utopia. He had built a cage. The apparition faded, leaving silence thick as grief. Outside, the Necrons halted their advance. Their ranks parted, and through the void-racked clouds descended a single figure, massive, robed in living metal, bearing a crown of shattered stars. The last surviving augur identified it with a single phrase, Pharaon of the Sepulchral Crown. He landed before the fortress of Hera, his presence bending the air. Sons of flesh. His voice resonated across every frequency. Your Primarch chained gods beneath his throne. Now they wake. The ground trembled. Beneath Macragge, something vast began to stir. Sicarius ordered all firepower upon the Pharaon. Orbital bombardments rained from the heavens, plasma torrents lit the earth. But when the light faded, the figure still stood. He raised a single hand, and the bombardment froze mid-air, energy suspended like glass droplets before shattering backward, consuming the sky. In the command sanctum, panic broke through discipline. A junior officer whispered, "Perhaps the Emperor himself sleeps beneath us." Cassian looked at him with hollow eyes. No, something older. As the fortress shook, Varanus staggered out of the Primarch's chamber, his mind unraveling under revelation. He stumbled into the council hall, armor bleeding sparks. "The Codex, it was never just a guide to war," he rasped. "It's a map. The Codex Astartes is the lock." The words struck the commanders like a curse. To use the Codex as intended, to enact every law, every principle, was to keep the tombs sealed. But Guilliman's reforms, the changes wrought after his resurrection, had rewritten parts of it. In their quest for perfection, they had loosened the seals. Sicarius stared at the holy text projected before him, pages now pulsing faintly with alien script beneath the words of the Primarch. "By the throne. What have we done?" Below, the Pharaon raised his staff, striking the ground once. The sigil ignited across the entire planet, a vast lattice of emerald fire linking every city, every shrine, every battlefield. The world shuddered as if taking a breath. From the depths a sound emerged, not mechanical, not human, something between a choir and a scream. Across the stars, the tomb worlds answered. Varanus fell to his knees as realization dawned. The 500 worlds were not a realm. They were a system of locks, each one binding an ancient consciousness beneath. And now every one of them was breaking. The fortress lights died. The sky turned black. In that darkness, the heartbeat ceased. And for the first time in 10,000 years, Robot Guilliman opened his eyes. They glowed not blue, but green. And somewhere in the void, a machine god wept. The galaxy held its breath. When Guilliman's eyes opened, the light within the fortress of Hera died. What little illumination remained came from the glow of his pupils, a cold emerald radiance that cut through the sanctum like the edge of a blade. His armor, once a relic of the Imperium's purity, began to hum with alien resonance. The sigils of the Emperor shimmered, warping into symbols no human eye could endure. Varanus crawled backward, his rosarius burning against his chest as if rejecting its bearer. "My lord, father of Ultramar," he whispered. "You live." Guilliman's voice was not his own. It echoed with layered tones, human and inhuman interwoven, the sound of a choir and a tomb singing in unison. "I never died, my son. I was preserved between life and death, bound by the Emperor's will and another's." The floor beneath them trembled. Across Macragge, cathedrals collapsed, their bells tolling in rhythm with a deeper pulse beneath the planet's crust. In orbit, the battle raged without reason. The Ultramar fleet, fragmented and leaderless, fought on instinct, voidcraft firing until their reactors bled. The Necron ships moved with mathematical precision, never hurried, never hesitant. A single command pulse from the Pharaon guided millions of warriors as if they shared one will. And below, the newly awakened Primarch raised his gaze to the heavens, his expression unreadable. Cassian felt it in his mind first, the psychic scream. It was not pain but clarity, unbearable in its totality. Visions flooded him, Guilliman standing before the Emperor's golden throne, words exchanged in silence, a covenant formed not in faith, but necessity. The Primarch had known of the tombs. He had known since the birth of Ultramar. The Emperor had ordered their containment. But what the Emperor did not foresee, or would not admit, was that the Necrons were not the enemy. They were the jailers. In that moment, Cassian's mind fractured. He saw through time, back to when the galaxy was young, when star gods warred and species were sculpted to serve. The Necrons had enslaved the Citan, the god machines of living energy. But they had not destroyed them all. Some were imprisoned, fragmented, buried in worlds scattered across the void. Guilliman's empire had unknowingly been built upon one such prison, and the Emperor, the master of mankind, had bound himself to it. Cassian staggered, blood streaming from his eyes. "He used them," he gasped. "The Emperor bound his light to their god's remains. That's why his power burns through the warp. He is the reflection of a dead star." Sicarius struck him, furious and afraid. "Blasphemy!" Cassian fell, smiling through blood. Truth is always blasphemy, until the gods fall silent. The fortress shook again. Columns cracked, statues of saints shattered. Guilliman stepped forward, each movement deliberate, heavy with inevitability. "I see now," he said softly. "All my victories were chains. Every codex, every law, containment protocols written in faith." Varanus rose, trembling. "Then the Emperor's will was a compromise," Guilliman interrupted. "He made pacts in the dark. To save mankind, he chained death itself. And I was the warden." Outside, the Necron lines halted their assault. The Pharaon stood before the ruined gates, his gaze locked on Guilliman's rising form. For the first time in aeons, the Deathless bowed. "Warden of the bound star," the Pharaon intoned, "your vigil ends." The Ultramarines watching from the battlements faltered. The sons of Guilliman did not know whether to fire or kneel. Their father's face, once their beacon, now radiated an alien divinity. The purity of their faith wavered. A young initiate whispered through his vox link, "If our Primarch was their jailer, then who are we?" No one answered. In the catacombs below, the containment fields ruptured one by one. Rivers of green light flowed through veins of rock, converging into a colossal sphere beneath Macragge's core. Within it lay something vast and formless, a consciousness older than stars, flickering like a dying sun. It stirred as if tasting freedom for the first time in millennia. The Pharaon raised his staff. The star god returns. The covenant renews. Guilliman's expression hardened. "No, it ends." He leapt from the fortress heights, descending like a falling comet. The ground erupted as he struck, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Necron and Space Marine alike were thrown to the earth. Guilliman and the Pharaon met in the center, titans of faith and reason colliding. Their first blows tore the air apart, the sound rolling across continents. Sicarius watched from above, speechless. "He's fighting with them," someone whispered. Another voice answered, "No, against everything." The battle became symbolic, the embodiment of humanity's eternal paradox. Guilliman's every strike echoed with the will of the Emperor, yet his aura radiated the green light of the Necron star. Half man, half god machine, he was both savior and destroyer. In the ruins of St. Aeon's Cathedral, Varanus gathered the wounded. He looked upon the torn banners of Ultramar and felt something break inside him. Not faith, but certainty. For the first time he prayed not to the Emperor, but to the truth. "If you are not what we believed," he whispered, "then let us still serve what we must become." The sky split open. A psychic storm engulfed the planet, tearing at the veil of the warp. Astropaths across the Imperium screamed in unison. The Astronomicon, the Emperor's guiding light, flickered. For a single instant, every ship in the Imperium lost its course. And in that darkness, voices whispered from the void. Not demons, something colder. Release us. On Terra, the priests of the ecclesiarchy fell to their knees as the golden glow of the palace dimmed. The Emperor's throne pulsed erratically. Tech priests reported a resonance identical to the Necron frequencies detected on Macraga. Panic spread through the Holy Synod. To admit what they felt was heresy, to deny it was death. Meanwhile, on Macraga, the war reached its fever pitch. The Necron phalanxes surrounded the fortress once more, but now their weapons were aimed downward, into the earth. Guilliman's duel with the Farron had cracked the surface, exposing the prison beneath. The creature within stirred, vast, formless, divine. Its whispers filled the minds of all who fought. "You are all my reflections," it said. "Flesh, machine, faith, logic, I am the pulse that binds you." Guilliman roared in denial, driving his blade through the Farron's chest. "You are the lie that shaped us." The Farron's metallic form split apart, yet his voice persisted. "Then destroy yourself, Warden. You are the final lock." And in that moment, Guilliman hesitated. Cassian, broken but still conscious, felt the Primarch's doubt ripple through the psychic field. The truth dawned. Guilliman's own life force was the final seal. His resurrection, the Emperor's miracle, had been the last tether holding the ancient god beneath Ultramar. If he died, the seal would collapse. If he lived, the god would remain bound, but at the cost of humanity's freedom to evolve beyond its chains. Varinus understood too late. He cried out across the comms, "Father, no, there must be another way." Guilliman looked skyward, his voice trembling with both fury and sorrow. There never was another way. He plunged his blade into his own chest. The world screamed. A blinding wave of light engulfed everything, Necron, human, machine, and stone. When it faded, half of Macragge was gone. The Necron forces vanished as if erased. Only scorched ruins remained, and in the center a crater where the fortress of Hera once stood. Varanus awoke amid the ashes. His armor was cracked, his vision clouded. Around him lay silence, not victory, not defeat, but absence. He stumbled forward until he found a fragment of armor still glowing faintly blue. He fell to his knees, touching it with trembling hands. Then he saw it, etched into the scorched ground beneath his feet. A symbol, vast and circular, neither Imperial nor Necron. It pulsed once, then faded. He realized with horror that it was not a mark of death, but of continuation. In orbit, the surviving Ultramar fleet received a transmission. It bore no identification, no origin. Only a voice, calm, resonant, familiar. "I am not gone," it said. "The light must change, or it will devour all it touches. Tell them the Emperor was never a god. He was a keeper. Now the gate stands open." The transmission ended. Across the Imperium, the Astronomicon flared once more, but its light had changed. No longer golden, it burned green. The priests of Terra fell silent. The High Lords argued in whispers. The Inquisition began purges before questions could be asked. And in the quiet heart of the void, where no signal should reach, a new constellation appeared, 500 points of green fire, forming a perfect circle. The Deathless were not gone. The Primarch was not dead, and the Emperor's light was no longer alone. Somewhere beyond time, a voice echoed through the warp, neither prayer nor curse. "The cage has opened. Now see what was kept within." The green light never faded. It lingered across the heavens like a wound that refused to close. Every world within the 500 burned under its radiance, and every mortal eye that gazed upon it felt a truth too vast to name. The Astronomicon, once golden and pure, now pulsed with alien rhythm. A beacon not of faith, but of awakening. On Macragge, the crater that had devoured the fortress of Hera smoked for months. No body of Guilliman was ever found. Only fragments of ceramite fused to glass. The surviving Ultramarines built a shrine there, a hollow circle of stone around the emptiness, an altar to uncertainty. Some knelt, believing their Primarch ascended. Others stood in silence, unsure if they prayed to salvation or betrayal. Chaplain Varanus no longer wore his helm. His face was scarred, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. He wandered the ruins at dawn, reciting prayers that no longer answered him. The words fell from his lips like ash. Around him, refugees rebuilt in quiet despair, their songs brittle, their faith fractured. When he slept, he dreamed of Guilliman's eyes, green and cold, filled not with hatred, but comprehension. And beneath that gaze, the sound of a heart beating where none should exist. In the void above Ultramar, the surviving fleet drifted in formation around the dead world. Vox traffic had fallen to whispers. Admirals spoke through coded prayers, fearful that even their thoughts could be heard by something listening from beyond the stars. Some ships refused orders altogether, locking into orbit and broadcasting hymns of penitence. Others fled into the void, declaring Ultramar damned. Among the scattered remnants, Captain Sicarius watched the green beacon through his visor. His armor still bore scorch marks from the last battle. "We called it victory," he muttered, "but victory leaves corpses that never stop screaming." He turned to his second-in-command, a veteran whose eyes were hollowed by radiation burns. "If our father's gone, who carries his word?" The veteran answered quietly, "Perhaps no one was meant to." On Ajax, once a garden world of Ultramar's beauty, storms of dust and bone swept the valleys. Necron ruins jutted through the soil like broken altars. The people no longer prayed to the Emperor, they prayed to memory, to fields that once bloomed, to sons who did not return. A single Ultramarine squad held the last bastion there, guarding an Imperial relic whose light now flickered green. The sergeant wrote his final entry before the Vox lines went silent. "The relic still beats. It sounds like a heart. It knows we are watching." Across the Imperium, word of Ultramar's transformation spread like a contagion. The Ecclesiarchy called it a test of faith. The Inquisition called it a contagion of heresy. The Mechanicus called it proof of divine union between man and machine. But among the common folk, a darker whisper grew, that the Emperor's light was no longer his own. On Terra, beneath the golden dome of the palace, the High Lords convened. The light of the Astronomicon pulsed above them, turning the air a sickly shade of emerald. The Sigillites' successors, robed in secrecy, debated war. Some demanded the obliteration of Ultramar before corruption spread. Others begged restraint. To destroy Guilliman's realm was to destroy the very model of imperial order. A silence fell as the master of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica spoke. "Our astropaths hear two voices in the beacon now. One speaks in the Emperor's tone, the other..." He paused, his throat dry. "The other speaks back." The council erupted. Faith collided with fear, logic with heresy. None noticed when the light above them flickered again, brighter this time, almost as if it listened. Back in the ruins of Macragge, Varanus received a summons from orbit. The surviving Ultramarines sought his counsel not as chaplain, but as the last man who had stood before the Primarch's living form. When he arrived aboard the flagship Valin's Wrath, the air was thick with tension. Marines stood at prayer posts, their armor unpainted, their banners rolled in mourning. Sicarius greeted him without ceremony. "We've found something," he said. "In the crater." They led Varanus into the ship's sanctum, where a containment field shimmered. Within it hovered a shard of crystalline metal, pulsing faintly. It was the same color as Guilliman's eyes. "It speaks," Sicarius whispered. not in words, but in memory. The shard vibrated, releasing waves of light across the chamber. Images flared, worlds burning, stars devoured, gods chained. Guilliman standing before the Emperor's throne, not in devotion, but defiance. His voice echoed through the psychic field. We are the children of jailers, not saviors. The Imperium endures because it cannot die and cannot live. Varanus fell to his knees. He knew all of it. The shard dimmed, then flared once more. A final image appeared, the map of Ultramar, reshaped. Each world connected by threads of green light, forming a lattice that extended beyond known space. The pattern pulsed like veins, leading to a single, uncharted point in the void. Sicarius stared. A new Ultramar, he said. Or a new tomb. Varanus rose slowly. No, a gate. Before they could react, the ship shuddered. The stars outside shifted, every vessel's sensors screaming with gravitational distortion. The green light from the shard synchronized with the Astronomicon. Across the fleet, the crew fell to their knees, their minds flooded with visions. Some saw the Emperor, golden and radiant, standing upon a field of corpses. Others saw Guilliman beside him, their hands clasped, light and shadow intertwined. But most saw only a door, vast and formless, opening into the void. The Vox burst alive with voices chanting in unison, human and mechanical, loyal and heretical. The gate calls, the gate calls. Sicarius roared for silence, but even he could feel it, the pull. It was not madness, it was direction. On the planet's surface, the ruins trembled once more. Dust rose, forming shapes in the wind, outlines of warriors long dead, statues of the Emperor melting into the earth. The heart of Ultramar pulsed beneath the ground, sending ripples through space-time. Varanus clutched his rosarius. If we follow it, he said, we may find the truth. Sicarius turned to him. And if we refuse, then it will find us. The fleet reformed without orders. Engines ignited, hulls glowing beneath the sickly green light. Each captain whispered their oaths in silence, not to the Emperor, not to Guilliman, but to duty itself. The kind that endures when belief dies. The Valin's wrath took point, its prow cutting through the void toward the coordinates. Behind it followed a procession of ships, wounded, burning, but united. As they entered the warp, the Astronomicon flared once more, guiding them. But the light that reached them was no longer holy. It whispered, it beckoned, it remembered. Varanus stood on the command deck, watching the distortion of stars. Faith, he murmured, was never meant to save us. It was meant to carry us through damnation. Then the warp screamed. Every instrument died at once. Space folded inward, and for a moment there was only silence, so complete it became a presence of its own. When sound returned, it came as a whisper across every vox, every mind, every atom. Children of the gate, it said, the storm is here. The fleet burst into real space above a world that should not exist, a sphere of black stone suspended in the void, encircled by green lightning. Its surface was etched with patterns identical to the Codex Astartes, each line pulsing with alien rhythm. Sicarius turned to Varanus, voice barely human. That world, Varanus nodded. It bears his script and his sin. Lightning danced across the void. The heart of the storm opened, revealing a vast structure within, half temple, half machine. The fleet approached in silence. Every man aboard felt the weight of something watching from beyond. The whisper grew louder, no longer many voices but one. It was not the Emperor, it was not Guilliman, it was both, and neither. Enter, it said, and as the first ship descended into the storm, time seemed to falter, a pause before the end or the beginning. The void itself, inhaled, and the galaxy waited for what would come next. They broke through the storm like ghosts breaching the veil of heaven. Lightning arced across the void, green and silent, illuminating the fleet as it descended toward the world of black stone. The atmosphere shimmered like liquid glass. Vox channels screamed with static. Prayers dissolved into white noise. No Emperor's light reached them here. Only the pulse of that impossible planet, beating like a heart too vast to belong to any god. Sicarius stood upon the bridge of the Valin's wrath, helm off, eyes hollow with sleepless clarity. The storm reflected in his pupils, 1,000 shards of truth and terror. "Hold formation," he commanded, though his voice carried no faith, only resolve. Around him, the crew recited the litany of endings. Their voices trembled. Below them, the world opened. The black stone parted like a wound, revealing a city beneath, geometric, endless, alive. Structures moved like thought, shifting and reforming with purpose. Every street, every monument pulsed with the same rhythm as Guilliman's shard. The fleet's sensors named it impossible. The soul called it familiar. Varanus whispered a prayer he no longer believed. If this is where he leads us, then even damnation must have order. Dropships fell through the lightless sky, their hulls burning emerald in the descent. As they broke the clouds, they saw it, a colossal figure carved into the planet's core, lying as if in eternal repose. Guilliman's likeness, sculpted not by human hands but by some cosmic will. The face was serene, the eyes closed, and from the chest rose a faint glow. They landed on what resembled a cathedral floor. The stone beneath their boots was warm, almost living. Symbols of both the Imperium and the Necron Empire intertwined underfoot. Every breath echoed with the hum of unseen machinery. Varanus knelt, feeling the vibration through his armor. "The Primarch sleeps," he said. "Or something does." Sicarius led the vanguard forward. They passed statues of the Emperor, all with shattered faces. Monuments of faith turned to dust by unseen hands. The further they walked, the heavier the air became, thick with energy and memory. The men began to hear voices, soft layered whispers repeating their own names. Some fell to their knees, sobbing. Others raised bolters in panic. At the heart of the city lay a chamber vast as a starship hangar. A single throne stood at its center, made of bone-white alloy that breathed with each pulse of the planet's heart. Upon it sat a figure in ultramarine blue, armor fractured, helm removed. Guilliman. But his flesh was gone, his form was crystalline, his veins glowing with green light. Sicarius approached one step at a time. "Father," his voice broke, "we came as you commanded." The figure stirred, its eyes opened, not blue, not human. Twin emerald suns burned where once divine will had dwelled. "You came as I required," the voice said. It was not sound but vibration, resonating in bone and metal. "You carried the Imperium's last breath to me. You carried its faith, so I might end it." Varanus fell back. "No, this cannot be. You are Guilliman. You are our father, our savior." "I was," the being said, "once, until I saw the truth." The chamber shifted, showing visions in light and memory, terror, decayed and hollow, the Emperor upon the throne, a corpse god whose soul flickered in agony, the galaxy chained by its own worship. "He does not live," the being whispered. "He endures, feeding upon devotion. The Imperium is not his creation, it is his tomb." Sicarius trembled, fury and sorrow warring within him. "Lies," he roared, but his words died in the air. The being rose, towering above them. The green glow spread from its body into the ground, through the walls, into the sky. "I will unmake his prison. I will free mankind from the weight of false eternity. Ultramar shall be the first, reborn, not in his image, but in truth." Bolters roared. The Ultramarines fired, tears streaming beneath their helms. The shells dissolved before they reached him, turned to dust by fields of impossible energy. Guilliman, or what remained of him, extended a hand. Light struck them like a wave. Armor shattered, flesh screamed, memories tore free. Varanus saw his brothers disintegrate, their souls stretch thin across the warp. Yet within that horror he saw something deeper. Their spirits did not vanish. They joined the storm. They became light. He crawled forward, grasping his rosarius, voice breaking into prayer. If this is truth, then let the lie save us one last time. Sicarius, dying on his knees, lifted his blade. You taught us order, he whispered. Now learn loyalty. With his final strength, he drove his sword into the ground, into the heart of the chamber. The Codex Astartes runes on his gauntlet flared, activating the last failsafe of Ultramar, a self-immolating psionic charge designed to erase a world rather than see it fall to corruption. Guilliman's eyes widened. For the first time, the voice faltered. You would destroy what I cannot control, Sicarius said, and smiled. The explosion bloomed like a dying star, light and shadow intertwined, folding the city in upon itself. The world screamed, its song turning to silence. The fleet above watched the surface rupture, then collapse into itself. The black planet folded inward, a singularity of faith and ruin. The storm broke. Silence followed. The Astronomicon flickered once, twice, then burned gold again. Across the Imperium, astropaths cried out as the green presence vanished from their minds. On Terra, the High Lords fell to their knees. The beacon pulsed steady for the first time in centuries. But on Macragge, something stirred beneath the ashes. From the crater where the fortress once stood, faint motes of green light drifted upward like fireflies. They formed symbols upon the air, not of chaos, not of heresy, but of order beyond understanding. A single voice echoed in the wind, soft, weary, familiar. Faith is the chain and the key. The Emperor endures because we believe he must. Varanus awoke in the darkness. He did not know if he still lived or if the afterlife resembled the void. His armor was gone. His body bled starlight. He felt the heartbeat of something vast, distant, still alive. The words of his Primarch haunted him. He saw fragments, Sicarius's sacrifice, Guilliman's fall, the death of gods, and in the distance, the faint hum of the Imperium's light, restored. But was it victory? Or simply the lie rebuilt anew? He stood upon the surface of nothing, surrounded by echoes of his brothers, their forms made of light. One turned toward him, Sicarius, whole again, smiling as if unburdened. We held the line, he said. Varanus nodded. For what? For them, came the answer, always for them. The stars beyond rippled. Something shifted in their rhythm, not corruption, not salvation, but change. The Emperor's light still shone, golden and pure, yet faintly touched by green. A reminder, a scar. Across the galaxy, countless souls prayed without knowing why their hearts trembled. Some claimed they heard a second voice in their hymns, calm and human. Others dreamed of a man standing beside the golden throne, his eyes closed, his hand upon the Emperor's shoulder, not in rebellion, not in worship, but in understanding. On the edge of Ultramar's ruins, a single message pulsed across the void, encoded in a language older than faith. The gate remains, the storm sleeps, but the truth remembers. And in that silence after the storm, as the stars returned to their quiet vigil, the Imperium carried on, scarred, unknowing, eternal. Somewhere between God and machine, life and death, faith and truth, a presence lingered, watching, waiting. The galaxy exhaled, and history turned its page. The stars no longer screamed. Their light drifted once more in silence, slow and unhurried, as though the galaxy itself was remembering how to breathe. The storm that had consumed Ultramar was gone, folded into myth and radiation, leaving only a wound of stillness in its place. No signal, no cry for help. Only the ghostly hum of void-born echoes, traveling forever between the bones of lost ships and the ruins of 1,000 worlds that once called themselves the 500. Macragge turned again in its slow orbit, wrapped in dust and mourning. The fortress had become a shrine of shadows. The crater where Guilliman fell was now filled with liquid light, not gold, not green, but something between. Pilgrims gathered along its rim, wordless, their faces half lit by reflection. They did not know what they worshipped anymore. They prayed not for victory but for memory, that the name of what was lost might not be forgotten to silence. The Imperium called it salvation. The Ecclesiarchy declared it a miracle, the Emperor's light restored, the Astronomicon steady once more. On every world, sermons echoed like thunder. But beneath the hymns, beneath the banners and the incense, a quiet uncertainty grew. Some said the light burned differently now, warmer, softer, as if the fire itself had learned mercy. Others said it was dimmer, like a candle nearing its end. In the ruins of Hera, Chaplain Varanus walked alone among the dead. His armor was gone, replaced by robes of faded blue. He no longer carried a weapon, only a small tome, bound in ceramite and written in 2 hands, one of man, one of something else. The Codex Astartes had become scripture again, but this new text was different. Its words spoke not of tactics or war, but of remembrance, humility, and the duty of those who survive. He stopped before the crater's edge and knelt, the reflection of that strange light dancing across his scarred face. "You built an empire from devotion," he murmured to the void, "and devotion destroyed it. Perhaps that was always the truth of mankind." Wind moved across the ruins, carrying dust and the faint whisper of ancient hymns. He could almost hear voices in it, Sicarius, calling out through time, the laughter of men who died believing they were eternal. He thought of Guilliman, of the look in those green eyes, not hatred, not corruption, but weary understanding. In the distance, the banners of Ultramar hung limp in the thin wind. Their colors had faded, the aquila barely visible beneath centuries of soot. But they still stood. Even in ruin, they stood. The void above shimmered faintly, and from the unseen depths, the remnants of the fleet drifted home. Their hulls bore the scars of the impossible, their machine spirits half broken and dreaming. Vox messages played without sender or end, voices repeating prayers, coordinates, fragments of memory. Among them, one recording survived, its origin unknown, a voice low, calm, and human. "Do not seek gods in the fire. Do not build thrones from the bones of the faithful. The Emperor endures not because we worship, but because we remember." It was not Guilliman's voice, and yet it carried his weight. Across the Imperium, strange dreams spread among psychers and priests alike. Dreams of a second sun rising from behind Terra, pale and silent, bathing the throne in light neither holy nor profane. Some said it was the echo of the gate, still open, still watching. Others said it was simply the mind of humanity healing, at last daring to imagine peace. But peace was a word the Imperium did not know how to speak. On Baal, the Blood Angels rebuilt their fortress under skies of red ash. On Cardia's shattered fragments, new regiments trained in silence. On Terra, the High Lords argued in gilded halls, their words heavy with the same fear that had ruled them for 10,000 years. The machine kept turning as it always had, powered by faith and corpses. And yet, something in the rhythm had changed. Pilgrims began carving new icons, not the Emperor enthroned, but a figure standing beside him, hand on his shoulder, gaze turned toward the stars. They named him the Guardian of Silence. The ecclesiarchy condemned it as heresy, but the image spread. It was said to bring calm to those who dreamed of war. Varanus watched the new faith grow in whispers. He neither blessed nor condemned it. Instead, he wrote. His chronicle became the testament of the storm, a record of the days when gods bled and faith bent but did not break. He wrote not for soldiers or saints, but for the ones who would come after, those who would inherit the burden of remembering. The galaxy endures, he wrote, not because it is strong, but because it refuses to forget. In time, even his hand grew still. His last entry was written with trembling fingers, ink mixed with blood. Perhaps the Emperor was right to be silent. Perhaps he waits for us to learn what his words could never teach, that divinity is not power but persistence. He closed the tome and placed it upon the altar of the crater, where light rose and fell like the breath of a sleeping god. Then he looked up at the stars, one final time. They seemed closer now, not merciful but listening. The void trembled faintly, like the echo of a heartbeat across eternity. Somewhere in that sound a promise lingered, not of victory nor redemption, but continuation. And so the chroniclers of Ultramar began their long vigil. They rebuilt the archives stone by stone, page by page, whispering the names of the fallen into the dust. They said that every name spoken became a star, every word remembered a shield against oblivion. In the deep night of the Imperium, where the light of hope was thin and fragile, remembrance became its own form of worship. What then is faith, if not the courage to walk in darkness, believing there is meaning, even when the gods no longer speak? And what is humanity, if not the will to build again, knowing the stars will one day burn out? Perhaps the galaxy will forget. Perhaps even these words will fade into dust, carried away by the endless tide of war and silence. But for now, the Emperor's light still burns, steady, imperfect, human, and far beyond the reach of mortal sight, something watches from the other side of the gate, neither enemy nor savior, only memory, the reflection of what was lost and what might yet be. The stars exhale, the story ends, the silence returns, and in that silence, history whispers its last prayer. We endured. Like the echoes of the Astartes who stood against eternity, their faith fractured but their duty unbroken. The words remain carried through the void. If their story moved you, remember it. Let it live again through your voice. Like, subscribe and share, so their legend may never fade from the light of mankind. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, for even in the 41st millennium, every voice still matters.